Hello everyone, welcome. This is Team Poo Poo. My name is Jose, and I'm going to introduce you guys to our final project. I'm going to list all of the stuff that I have in there. I have a test, executable, and a final executable on the left side. I have the header file here, the final.h, the final source.cpp, and the main.cpp. I also have these two object files. So this is the final build, and I'm just gonna the dot slash just so I can run the program. Okay, think of a number between 1 and 9. It can be 1 or 9, not less or more than that. Okay, enter 0 when you're done thinking. I'm gonna choose the number 6. Okay, multiply the number by 9. Okay, 6 times 9 is 54 plus 72. Just so that we're all on the right page. 126. Okay, 126 is our calculated number. Now, first put the minimum number and hit enter and input the next number. So range of 5, so I'm going to put 125 to 130, and it should be able to calculate it. Your calculated number was 126, your original number was 6. That's correct. I'll show you guys the inner workings of the program. So the first thing, I'm going to open up the files. Okay. So I have them here. This is the main file. This is the main function here. This is where all the magic happens. So here we declare a table random number. So this is an object of the class table, the random number. We declared an int a. Here we don't use it for much. We just use it so you could see in a 0 into it to give you time to think of your number. The cout statements. Cout just means you output text to the monitor, and in order to use a cout you need to have this header here, the using namespace standard, and you also need to have include iostream, and we're also including our header file here so we can link it so it can all work together. So as you can see in the text here, this is all that's displayed. We also have here some class member functions like randvec, add function, original number, and the range. Okay, so let's go to the header file. The header file, you have the if then, final, and define. And we include a vector here because we're going to use a vector as a private data. These are all our functions within the class. They're public. The only thing that's private, it's data. So we go to the source file. You can see here that you have this special syntax. So you have a table and a double semicolon and table again. So this is going to be a similar thing for all the functions. This is just you defining what that function means. If you go back to the header file, here you have a semicolon after everything, and even after the curly braces, which is not typical in a main function. So here, like here, you don't need a semicolon there. But you do need one for the header file. Okay, and this is how you declare a class. Right, so go back to the source file. We do have a couple global variables. These are all global variables. The global variables just means that you can access these variables anywhere.
Picks a random number between 6 to 9 and creates a table of that random number in a vector, as you can see in the source file. So
we have the randvec, which creates a random vector using a for loop. So it's gonna use the for loop and the pushback function from a vector, so you can add more numbers into the vector itself. So how it works is you have here int a equals random number times I. So random number is just a randomly generated number here that we have. It's from 6 to 9, and what it does is it multiplies this times I, and it's going to keep doing this 20 times. So it's basically going to create a vector like a timetable. It's going to say the first one's going to be 0, the second one's going to be let's say 6 was the random one, 6 and 12 and then 18, 24, and so it's going to create a vector of all the numbers that are divisible by 6. Basically, from here we create the random vector pushback, yeah, I explained that, equals a. So here, this goes there, so the answer here gets pushed back, so it gets put into the vector. And so once the loop is done, the random vector is created. As if you remember, the random vector is one of our private data, so it's accessible by all other functions. Right here we have the table num function. Now with this function, just randomly generates a number, just like over here in the random number.
These random number functions are going to interact with the user by engaging them to do a little bit of mental math. The first random number function is going to generate a value between 6 and 9. This value is for the user to multiply by their original number. Then, if you look just below that, there is a random number function that is going to generate a number between 1 and 10 and store it in the derived class table_num.
It's gonna go through the function. It's gonna declare out the numAdd, which is a global variable. Once it randomly generates a number, and it gets put through the vector, it picks out one of the values, gets put here, gets returned, and once it gets called here, it returns it, and then it says, please add that number with your answer. And if you remember from the code itself here, that was one of the things. It was, please add with your answer. Since that's what this does here, so this function gets mixed with this function here, and so both of these just kind of get a number and tell you to add it by. And so lastly, it's the range.
The only input that the users ask for is the range, which is in the source file. Here the range function inputs the minimum and maximum range. Note that the interval is of 5s, example 5 to 10 or 10 to 15. And then it finds the multiple of the first random number that the user multiplied falling under that range.
With your input, it's gonna do an if statement. If vector I is greater than or equal to the user minimum and less than or equal to the maximum, then the answer equals the random vector. Here we declared user min, user max, and the answer, so that equals that. Chosen equals answer, and chosen is again one of our global variables. And see how your calculator number is. Checking your range with the entire vector, it's going to calculate the number that fits. We made it a scope of 5, that way you don't have two numbers within each other. It tells you your calculator number is after checking the range 126. Because it was between 125 and 130, 126 is the only number in the vector that's within that range. Lastly, it's the original number function. So that function kind of calculates your original number from the information that we have. The cool hat trick about this program is that it only asks for one input to calculate a number that you chose, and it tells you the number that we're kind of guiding you to calculate. And then from that information, we're able to trace it back to your original number. And the real number equals chosen minus numAdd divided by random number. So you can see these are all global variables, and the reason we made them global so we could use them in that function. So this is the randomly generated number. So like, let's say for us it was 9. So right here you have to divide by 9 in the end, and then it's chosen minus numAdd. If you remember, the chosen was the answer here, your calculator number. And so we subtract chosen, which is equal to the answer here, by numAdd, and numAdd is here you get from the vector after you index it. So I'm gonna make an example of the example that we did. Okay, so between 125 and 130, you get 126 is the only possible number. And it calculates the original number is 6, because from 126 it subtracts 72, and 72 minus 126, let's take the calculator. So 126 minus 72 equals 54. If you remember, after you multiply times your original number times 9, you get 54. So then we divide it by that number, and we get back to your answer. And let's go here. And then it returns a real number. So let's go back. And that's exactly what the program does.